So welcome to the Womanship Worry Less lunch series. So whether you're watching this live or joining us live or catching the replay, which I recommend you do as you would a podcast, I'm really glad that you're here. So these sessions are relaxed, unscripted conversations where we go beyond the bios to meet the real women. I'm really happy to welcome Genevieve O'Kelly, who is a marketing consultant by day and by night a spiritual medium. So she brings both spiritual wisdom and sharp strategy to the table. And she was one of our amazing workshop hosts for the Womanship A to Z of Things We Don't Talk About, D for Death. So whether she's facilitating a spiritual reading or advising on brand storytelling, Genevieve's work is grounded in empathy and meaning. So welcome, Genevieve.
Thank you so much, Nicolette. It's an honour to be here with you and with everybody.
So first question, what are you having for lunch today?
Oh, I'm going to have some broccoli and potato with hummus and sun-dried tomatoes. I've got it all lined up and ready to go for after we finish.
Okay, so a few questions. Something I'm passionate about is connection. So how do you first remember us meeting?
We met in January at the birthday of our mutual friend Shay, the networking goddess. And you asked me what I did, and I think, one of the first times I actually just came out and said I'm a spiritual medium. And then you said, wow, that's interesting because I'm having an event all about death and you might be bringing something unique to that conversation. And it went from there, and I presented at that talk, D for Death, and had a wonderful time, met some amazing people, which is, what womanship is all about, connecting like-minded women on every level, professional and personal. And we're having a lot of opportunities for collaboration and cooperation, which I'm really happy about.
I know, I was so happy to meet a spiritual medium. I had so many questions and I wanted to bring a lot of that to the conversation today. So going back to connections, I think, looking back over my life and hearing other women's stories, that we're actually a sum of key events and influences that have brought us to where we are in our lives today. So my first question is, can you share a little bit of your own journey by telling us what's made you the woman that you are today, Genevieve?
Wow, that's a great question, and a really deep question as well, because there are so many things. In fact, I would say everything in my life has contributed to who I am today. And I'm just getting started, actually, is how I feel. Mainly because the way that my life started, I was really not my authentic self. And my life started with a very strong spiritual connection. I had all kinds of amazing spiritual experiences in my childhood, in my teenage years, and it was really ongoing in my life. But I wasn't allowed to share that with anybody. I came from a very religious, rigid, white family in Sydney, Australia. And even though you think religion is about the spiritual world, well, not so much so for a lot of religions. And in my case, my spiritual beingness, the experiences I was having were really not welcome. It was sort of considered outside of the dogma of the church, and I'd already started having ideas that were divergent from the church, and I was already having discussions with particularly my father, about how I disagreed with the church. I didn't want to go to the church. And so the kind of split between who I was, who my family wanted me to be, started pretty early. And even though I was very much a fighter for what I believed in. That, you know, we're humans, we're very vulnerable and we get programmed, and that early life programming is very hard to break. So even though I was a very independently minded person and independently spirited person, I still felt the need to conform to get love, to be accepted, to have some form of that type of connection with people in my life. So the way my life started, I really tried to conform.
Can I ask what type
Yeah,
of experiences you were having at a young age?
sure. There's many. Yeah, I was just thinking about one I had the other day, and I'll share that one. But my spiritual experiences started very young. So when I was a young child, I saw two angels that were with me most of the time. There was a blue angel on my right-hand side and a green one on my left-hand side. And I would just be walking down the street and I'd see them. And they would be with me. Whenever I looked for them, they were there. And that really started very, very early. And then I had this experience when I was about 8, and I was doing cartwheels and handstands in my family home in the front garden in Sydney. And I'd fallen over from my handstand. I was lying in the grass and I looked up and this dog was walking towards me. He was very friendly. And he came up and he was sniffing me, and I reached out to touch his fur, and I could feel his breath on my ear while he was sniffing my hair. And then he was just gone. In front of my eyes, he disappeared. And I looked everywhere. I thought, what just happened? I really couldn't understand it. And for the longest time, I didn't have any explanation. Now I realized that I was seeing the ghost of a neighborhood dog who had recently died. And so at a certain point in that interaction, my conscious mind probably kicked in and felt like something wasn't right, and then he evaporated. But I did have...
Sorry, can I just say quickly, Kim, was that a dog who just suddenly jumped up when we started talking about dogs?
Oh my
gosh. Okay.
That's so weird. That's very synchronous, yes. Interesting. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Back over to you, Genevieve. Sorry.
And I had a spiritual experience which was really quite important when I was about 10 years old. This was the time when it had reached a kind of a fever pitch in my disagreements with my father, and he was actually threatening to disown me from the family because I wasn't towing the line in terms of going to the church and doing the things he wanted me to do. So I took myself, I think it was Good Friday, and I was 9 or 10 years old, and I took myself to my bedroom with a lined notepad and a pen, and I fell asleep. And when I woke up, there was bright light in my eyes, and I was screaming my head off, screaming at the top of the lungs, and the neighbors came over and my parents came in the room, and I had drawn a squiggle, and the pen had never left the paper, but I had drawn this perfectly outlined form of Mother Mary holding Jesus and all kinds of other things in the background, which were revealed later. But the main thing was this Mary holding Jesus. And my father saw this and he really just couldn't accept that this had happened. So he just walked out of the room, because in his mind, according to his programming, me not wanting to go to the church was me not agreeing with the story of all the stories of Mary and Jesus and you know, the Bible and everything. And I'd been trying to tell him, no, I really, really believe in that. I just don't think that what the church is teaching about that is right. A lot of things are missing and a lot of things aren't right for me. So this miracle, I mean, really was a miracle experience, was for me a lot of affirmation that I'm on the right path. And even though it's difficult with my family, it gave me a lot of faith that my connection was there. And for my father, it was the opposite of what he wanted to see. So that was a pretty major experience for me. And then 10 years later, I was looking at this drawing, and then I saw behind Mother Mary and a figure holding a washing bowl who was like a midwife. And then I saw a bird with a man on its back and all sorts of other faces and really interesting stuff. So I still have that drawing, and that means a lot to me. But as I went through life, I mean, also even in childhood, I just was able to see behind people's minds. I was able to focus on somebody and have a deeper feeling of what was in their heart and their mind at any particular time. And I expressed this to friends, and I remember they just had this glazed look on their face, like, that doesn't make any sense to us. And I mean, I could go on and on and on. There's so many stories. So I don't know if you want more of that. Tell me.
I love the stories. I mean, we can go back to them, but tell me more about your life then, in terms of how it progressed from this sort of family situation of not being able to be your authentic self to, you know, to the last few years, or the last 20 or so years, to where you are now.
So I went off and I had a business career. I did an undergraduate degree in art history, which was really just because I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be a visual artist, but again, my parents said, no, you can't make any money out of that, so that's not a good choice. So I kind of shelved that idea, and I did the next best thing that was approved of, which was a history degree. Actually, it didn't really help me very much, that degree. So I did an MBA as well, majored in marketing, and I had been working since I was a teenager, and so I was always gainfully employed in full-time positions, and I worked my way up in the business world and became a marketing person when online was booming. And did a lot of work with websites and things like that, which put me in a good position. And then I eventually completed my master's degree. I also ended a long-term relationship in my 20s. And then by the time I was 30, I was ready to travel. I was free. I had finished everything. I had the CV to probably get a good job when I eventually arrived overseas. And I came over during the financial crisis of 08-09, and everybody was flooding back to Sydney, people who'd been in London and other parts of Europe. But for me, it was still the right time to go. So I eventually settled on the Netherlands. I had a few friends here, and I was determined to make it work. I didn't know whether it would or it wouldn't, but everything worked out for me. I had some contracts. Back in those days, people weren't giving full-time contracts out very easily, so it took a while to get that, and then I could change my visa over to a highly skilled migrant visa. And some years later, I met my ex-husband, who is a Dutchman, and we got married. We did all the things you do, renovated a house, had a baby, and I was slowly burning out in my corporate career. Part of it was the job that I had, which was very demanding in terms of travel and very political organization. It was very stressful. And part of it was also me just putting so much energy into not being who I really was. That was really exhausting, really exhausting. And, to be honest, it was not only in the professional world, but also in my marriage. I'd married somebody who had very traditional, mainstream views, very much like my family or the person that my family wanted me to be. So I think at some subconscious level, that was also what I was trying to achieve with my marriage. And when I was becoming a mother, I really was faced with who do I want to be? Because I want to be my authentic self as a mother. And I realized that a lot of the little kingdoms I built in my life were reflecting somebody who wasn't me. They were reflecting somebody who I felt I had to be loved, to be liked. So around that time, this is just before COVID, I became retrenched from my job. I had a baby, and then we went into the COVID lockdowns, and then the issues in my marriage became really apparent, and then I went into a divorce. And it was almost like everything in my life that wasn't really who I was just sort of fell away, fell apart. And I was left to discover who am I really? And a couple of things came forwards in that period. One was my art, that I love to paint and I love to draw and I'm very creative, and I basically stuffed all of that into a box and buried it so that I could fit in with what I thought people wanted me to be. And then my spirituality was the other skeleton in the closet that just wanted to jump out. So I had been doing readings for friends, and I really enjoyed it. And they got a lot of value out of it. And they had started to tell people about me. And just through word of mouth, I was getting people coming to me from different parts of the world looking for a reading. And I still wasn't taking myself very seriously. I also had a lot of baggage in terms of self-esteem, because those parts of me were not wanted, they were disapproved of, but also there was this sense of, well, I can't do it. That's what I would always be told. Like, you cannot be successful doing things that you're good at, because they're creative and they're all these things that people don't really value. But I also had this sense of incompetence related to self-esteem just in general. So it took me a while to realize that people really were getting a lot of value out of this. And then I was also, just in these past couple of years thinking, well, I really kind of need a job, because I need to pay my bills, and I don't think that type of work can sustain me. At least now it takes a while to build your career and build a big enough customer group to do that. So maybe I should just go back and get a job. And while I still think that's probably a good idea to some degree or some level of job, the message that I really got from the spirit world and from my guides is, we really need you to be a light worker, because right now the world is going through tremendous change. There's so much upheaval, there's so much turbulence, and we're really moving from an old system to a new system. And there's just so many aspects of people's lives that are changing. There's a massive spiritual awakening. People need answers. People need to understand themselves spiritually more than ever before. So we need you to do this work because people need you. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to do it.
So I'm going to start asking some questions, and please, anybody who's listening, drop questions in as well. So tell us what being a spiritual medium actually means. What is it that you actually do?
So there are lots of aspects. Mediumship typically means communicating between the people who have passed into the spirit world and people who are alive. So being that bridge. I also am psychic, so I can just sit with people and not necessarily focus on dead people. I can also focus on living people. I can also feel into situations that are going on in living people's lives. I also do animal communication. I recently did quite a few sessions where I'm actually given photos of animals and I'm asked how they're feeling, what they're going through, particularly animals who are changing homes and what they need, what they're looking for, what are their wishes, what are their desires, what are their physical health complaints, that type of thing. I had a wonderful experience recently where a client asked on behalf of a friend of hers for me to give a reading for this friend's young son who is nonverbal and has significant health challenges. And so I focused on him, and I was able to describe things going on with him physically. I was able to give messages to his family, friends, carers that he couldn't give, and also to express wishes about what he wanted to do. And the best part for me was that I actually received feedback from the mother of the child confirming everything I'd said, even the really detailed information about his physical body and issues that he was having. So that's just so rewarding, you know, to be able to give a voice to somebody who's voiceless. I do tarot readings for people. A lot of my readings start out with tarot because it's a great way to have a level of objectivity. And sometimes, particularly if I'm reading for friends and I want to just put a little bit of objectivity in there because I'm personally invested in a good outcome for them, you know, so I might be influencing what I get. Tarot allows you to kind of see this mirror in the cards. So you can use the cards to validate things, to confirm things or deny things, whatever is coming through. It's kind of an extra level of information. Yeah, and a lot of the work that I do... Sorry?
Keep going. Sorry, I'll ask a question in a minute.
A lot of the work I do, it's kind of like spiritual counseling, and I must say I'm not a trained counselor. I don't have any type of official training in that way, but a lot of people I work with say, well, it's better than counseling, and there are great counselors out there. I'm certainly not dismissing counseling, but for me personally, I have also been to counselors, and I just didn't feel it cut through. But because I'm also a customer of spiritual mediums myself and psychics, I feel it gives so much more depth and clarity because you go to spirit, you go to the spiritual guides, you go to this level of bird's eye view that we cannot see. You know, a counselor who's never met you before doesn't have these types of insights, but spirit does because spirit can see everything. So I just always felt that the spiritual readings cut through and got to a deeper level really quickly compared to counseling or some of the other mainstream, you know, ways to assist people in their lives psychologically, emotionally, mentally. So it's not for everybody, but for a lot of people, it's the best.
I love the way that these chats give us the opportunity to find out more about what people do. And I know that some people may think that, you know, the whole spiritual medium thing is really kooky in some ways. And for me, it's about giving women the information and knowledge that they need to help them thrive. And for me, examples would be, I definitely believe there's something, but I remember going to a spiritual church with a friend of mine just because we were passing it, and the guy sort of picking on her and saying, you know, somebody's talking to me and they're talking with their hand in front of their mouth. I've got this woman here and she's giving me messages of love. And my friend just burst into tears because her grandmother, who passed away, had really bad teeth and used to speak with her hand in front of her mouth. So I'm very much in terms of saying, you know, I'm so open to knowing what's out there because I do believe there's more. And I've seen these little bits of it. Even the other day, I had a really bad day and a really bad week, actually. And I remember drawing a tarot card for myself on the Saturday thinking, you know, I'm going to draw the death card, even though death isn't necessarily a bad card. And it was really funny. I drew, I'm not very experienced. I drew like the 10 of, is it the 10 of cups? And basically the reading was, and it was a beautiful day. Outside is a beautiful day. The sun is shining, you know, everything is okay. You need to release what's going. And I remember it just being just the complete change I needed for my day, because otherwise I was under this dark cloud. So yeah, there's so many bits that I think we can combine, you know, mind, body, spirit, medical, non-medical, to find the answers we need. So a couple of questions, because you brought up some interesting things when you were talking. Can you describe more about light work? Because I'm hearing this term more and more, and I'm not certain everybody knows what it is. What is being a light worker?
So it's very simple. In the dualistic world that we have been living in for eons, you had the light and the dark. So a dark worker would be somebody on the dark side who is allied to dark energy and is all about death, destruction, suffering, chaos, etc. And those people do exist. And on the light side, you have those of us who are into love, unity, caring, compassion, healing, etc. So basically, anyone who is a light worker, who could be anybody, I mean, you definitely are, Nicolette, a light worker, is anybody who is working for the light side in whatever capacity they do. They may be an accountant, you know, it could be a beautiful, friendly customer service person working for a bank. It could be anybody. Light workers are everywhere.
My God, you've helped me suddenly get something into frame, because I have this, excuse me, I have this way of defining people, and it is, they're people who you come across who have it. And I've never been able to describe what it is, but as you said, you can pass them walking along the street, or, you know, serving you in a restaurant, or most of my friends, and they have something special that I've not been able to describe. And maybe that's the it that I'm talking about, the positivity that I've never been able to define before. And then you see people on the other side who, you know, however much I would like, I don't think will ever fucking get it. So maybe that's the definition that I've been looking for. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. And it's very important to say, you know, with spirituality, it's kind of a remnant of the past dogma of religions that make us think that spiritual people are up here and we're down here. No, most of humanity, and by that I mean the vast, vast, vast majority of humanity, are really spiritual and really good, even if they're not spiritual people. We all have a spirit, and if you're a good person, and if you're someone who's aligned with love, you know, you don't have to call it God. But if you're just aligned with caring about people and love, then that's it. You're a light worker. You're a spiritual person. You're a good person.
And you talked about guides. Can you tell us a little bit more about guides and how they come into play for you, and potentially for people who don't have as strong a spiritual connection as you do?
Sure. Yeah. Everybody has guides. I have confirmed this because every single spiritual reading I do, there's guides involved. And guides are energies. Every time a soul is created on the other side and then is birthed, that soul comes in with a set of guides, and it's usually more than one. And they may be individuals, or they may really be energies. So like I talked about the angels that I saw when I was a child, some of my guides are angels, and a lot of people have that. Some of your guides might be deceased family members who care a lot about you and had a contract or an agreement to be that guide for you, and you may be that guide for them as well. Everybody has guides, and your guides are almost like, you know, that cartoon with the little devil on one shoulder and the little angel on the other shoulder. Well, the guides will be that little angel on your shoulder. They're always whispering into your ear, trying to remind you of what's right for you, trying to get you to ask the right questions, trying to give you a nudge in the right direction in whatever way you need at any point in time. And something that I teach people is how to listen for your guides. And it's just practice. And that little devil on the other shoulder, that tends to be the outside world that wants to control you, wants to take your energy. You know, those people, unfortunately, the people who are aligned to that dark energy are still in our world. We are going through a process of transition. So there will come a point where they are much, much less. But at the moment, we're still dealing with them. So we all need guidance, and everybody has guides. And when you get used to listening for that subtle guidance, it helps a lot. And it is a lifelong process. There's been so many times when I've had guidance about something, and the little devil on the other shoulder won over for whatever reason. You know, it's certainly not like, okay, you hook into your guides and then you're never going to put a foot wrong for the rest of your life. It's a constant process of developing, listening for that subtle inner voice. But
and some people would call that, especially for women, I think it's something that we've not been taught to listen to, and that is our gut intuition. Is that the same thing that we're potentially talking about? This gut drive, this gut feeling that I think we have as women. And I look at mine now, and I always trust mine now. I never used to. I never used to listen to it. And now I trust that gut feeling, that gut intuition, or the feeling of, I'm just going to say this, it may sound crazy, but if I say it a week later, then it doesn't have the impact because something will have happened. But if I say it before it happens, then I'm just expressing myself and I feel I've got nothing to lose. Is that the same thing that we're talking about?
Yeah. So I would say, like, your gut feel, your intuition, and intuition can come, and it's actually the same as your psychic ability. Psychic ability tends to come more through the third eye. Your heart intuition and your gut intuition, you know, come from those places. Like, we know when we have that falling feeling in our gut, something's not right. And we know when we have that singing feeling in our heart that something's very right, or maybe it's very wrong. Or these are all our internal senses and abilities to receive information, and the guides will use all of those. So your guides are outside of you, but they're very, very, very close to you. So sometimes I hear the guides and they're right, literally speaking right into my ear. So when you're feeling like your gut intuition or your heart intuition, or you're feeling your intuition, it can also be that communication from your guides, and what you're feeling with your own internal senses is the truth and the resonance of that.
So for somebody who is, going through, I guess, daily life, we all have anxiety and worries. How can we start to recognize these signs or nudges from our guides?
So what has been extremely helpful for me, and what I really recommend, is a practice of meditation. And I'm so glad that you're doing the lunchtime meditations with Womanship to assist everyone to get into that practice. It's so powerful. And it can, if you can do 20 minutes a day, that's fantastic. But you can also just do 5. And it's just about slowing down, because we're so mentally driven. We're part of a very mental culture. And we're also driven, meaning like slaves. Like, we are driven. Now you're going to do this, and you have to do this, and you have to do this. And there's a lot of you have to do this coming from the outside world in just about every aspect of our lives. Meditation just gives you, even if it's 5 minutes a day, it's a period of rest where you can shut down the external mental stimulus coming from the outside world, and you can just sit in awareness with your body. just doing that already starts to strengthen the communication, the dialogue that you have within yourself to yourself. And that is the first step in accessing any level of intuition awareness, whether it's your psychic abilities, becoming more heart-centered, becoming more in touch with what your body needs, your intuition and your gut feel. That is the beginning of strengthening that communication. And the more that you do it, the stronger that communication gets over time.
Thank you. So, so when you're doing a session, what when you have a message that may feel, scary or unsettling to give, how do you deal with that? And how can we differentiate between, I guess, what's true guidance and what is our own fears?
Yeah, that's a huge question, and that's part of the craft and the art of, I'm going to call it channeling, is that you have to trust. And in the beginning, I did struggle, and it's like I'm saying with just psychic connection in general, it's an ongoing thing. It's an ongoing practice. You're constantly deepening it. You're constantly expanding it. You're working on yourself is a lifelong process, because every channel, every intuitive, every psychic, every medium, they all come with our own limiting beliefs, our own expectations, our own experiences that cloud our perception. No, it's not science. Nobody is completely objective. It is a subjective thing. So the best way that, well, I found that I can become a more and a more clear channel is to, number one, don't try to be perfect. Don't try to be objective. Don't pretend to be any of these things, but fully embrace the subjective nature of what I'm doing so that all of those things can be on the table. And the next thing is to be constantly working on myself. Because if you go to, just like if you go to any type of service provider for something, their limited beliefs about anything they're advising you on are going to cloud the advice that they give to you. So if you go to a counselor about a relationship, and this is a counselor who has their own major relationship problems, you're going to get some advice which may not be, as good as somebody who has really mastered a lot of relationships and has good long-term relationships and healthy boundaries and all of those types of things. So you have to constantly be working on yourself, and that is something that I always do. And in terms of being open and clear and receiving the best message, I just do my best, like I said, to work on myself, to reduce any filters that might cloud the message that I give my client. I also trust. So another thing that, is a big struggle when you're doing this type of work, especially in the beginning, is that you doubt, like, what if it's wrong? What if I'm going to say something wrong? What if what I'm getting is wrong? What if it's not right? And I was so worried about that in the beginning, because I want to give a great service. I want to do the best for the highest good of my clients and anybody involved, and I don't want to make any mistakes. And so I did a lot of second guessing myself in the beginning. And I got enough kind of experience and examples to show me that what I originally received was right, that I just kind of learned the best thing to do as the channel is to just trust, know that you're doing everything to work on yourself. You're constantly pushing yourself to get over your own issues, and then set your intention to be of the highest service to your client, and then just trust that what comes through is right for them. Sometimes things come through and I'm really like, ooh, I don't want to say that, or that sounds crazy, or that's not right. That still happens. And so the art form of channel or the psychic work is to turn down the volume on those thoughts, those nitpicky kind of critical thoughts that, well, this can't be right, and just suspend judgment and step aside, totally step my ego, my individuation, as Genevieve, step that aside and just trust that I'm just being the bridge, and what comes through is what the client needs to hear. And, you know, sometimes people are not happy with that. Sometimes people don't want to hear the truth. And that's just a constant lesson that we as channels and psychics have to learn is I'm just here to do my job as the channel. And if what comes through is difficult for you, I do my best to deliver it as softly as I can, but I can't be responsible for everybody's reaction to everything. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, I love the way that you were speaking about, you know, it's funny, it's so applicable to so many things, how we become our own blockages through self-doubt. And it feels that it's, you know, in everything that we do, in any career path, in our relationships, actually that's a big part of it, putting ourselves aside and going with what feels right rather than that little nagging voice of doubt that we have in our heads. So, so I was going to ask you a question which has just slipped out of my mind, which just shows how live this is. I know what it was. Okay, so in terms of who do you say should come to you, and how do you help them worry less? And sorry, just one note saying if anybody wants to ask a question, please feel free to put the hand up, to jump in, to drop it into the notes as well, because I'm certain you're as fascinated by this as I am. So how do you help women worry less, and who should come to you?
Oh, thanks. So anybody who has a nudge, if you have curiosity, if you have a recurring thought that you would like to try something like this, or you think that it might help you, that's a good sign that it can help you. Anybody, like I was saying, a lot of people have tried traditional counselors, psychologists, things like that to help them with their everyday life. And this isn't that. Like I said, I'm not qualified in that way. But a lot of people that I work with find it actually fills that gap where they haven't had the results from counselling or maybe even a psychologist. So it's to help you on a deep level. It's all about your growth spiritually, emotionally, mentally. It's about giving you a different perspective. Spirit can see totally around and outside of your limitations. They see just, you know, there's no limit to what spirit can't see. So it's a great opportunity for people to develop themselves, to find out more about themselves. And anybody who's on a journey of self-discovery, which I would say is probably all of us, could benefit. So if you feel the calling, then give it a shot.
I love that. Okay, so
I've got a question. Sorry.
Oh, yes, please. Hi,
I understand, because sometimes there is like the energy healer, and so what's the difference between you and someone who's called energy healer, or, you know, someone who wants to help through energy? Is it the same?
Yeah.
Or?
Well, I actually also am an energy healer. So if I work with people hands-on, which I don't do a lot of, only because I kind of my physical space, I'm not set up for that. But I have done work with people with my hands, and in my particular case, really strong currents of energy come out for about 10 minutes, and then it's done. That's what I do. I have done it online with people as well, and people do feel that. But, you know, there's a whole range of people in that space who do all kinds of things. I'm a bit of a jack of all trades. I can do a lot of things. there are some people who only do mediumship. They do not do psychic work, they do not do tarot, they do not do energy work, they only do mediumship. There's other people who only do psychic work, and so forth and so forth. And people are very different in the way that they work as well. Some people don't want to hear anything from you, they don't want to have any conversation, they just want to get all the information from the spirit world, and they'll give you what they've got and that's it. Some people like the interaction. I tend to like the interaction. It helps me connect with the energy. So in that world of spiritual healing, there's just a huge range of people. And what I tend to find, and I've just fully accepted, is that everybody does things in their own way. And the best way to get the most value out of a spiritual session, whether it's an energy healing session or, you know, some other modality, maybe something more structured like kinesiology or past life regressions, whatever it is to be open and go into patient mode where you just kind of receive. Don't have rigid expectations about what's going to happen, and just allow that person to do things in their way that works for them. And, you know, it's kind of like there's no right and there's no wrong. There's just people will be more of an energetic match with one practitioner than another, just purely on an energetic level. It doesn't mean that one practitioner is better or worse than the other. It's just more of an energetic alignment thing. And I have that as well. I've had clients, you know, where I just immediately feel an incredible rapport with this person I've never met before, and a huge amount of information comes through for them, and they're really happy with the session. And I've also had people where I feel a block on the energy from quite early on in the session, and I can see that they're not really appreciating what I'm saying, it's not landing well for them for whatever reason, and that happens as well. So you do have to shop around. I definitely recommend that you try all types of people. Don't just keep going back to the same person, because like I said, everybody has their own unique way of doing things. Everyone has their own unique perspective, and they also bring their own limitations to it as well. So it's always good to see a wide variety of people with a wide variety of ways of doing that type of work, and find out what works for you, and kind of change it up as well. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. Yeah, it's perfect. Thank you.
So when you talk about healing, and again, I'm sort of digging in, what do you mean by healing? Is it healing of illnesses, healing of emotions? How is that used?
Yeah, so in the spiritual world, healing is a holistic thing. Because most spiritual practitioners see illness as connected on many different levels. So maybe you have manifested a growth in your neck, for example, and if you go to mainstream medicine, they're going to really treat that on a purely physiological level and look acutely at that thing on your neck. Whereas if you go to people who are doing more spiritual modes of healing, they are going to investigate emotional links to that growth on your neck. What are the emotions associated with that? And then what are the thoughts and belief systems on the mental level that are creating those emotions? So, for example, if we believe something that's incorrect about ourselves, like we believe we're not good enough, that creates chronic emotional illness of anxiety, depression, things like that over time, which affect the physical body. So there's a book I heard of recently called The Body Keeps the Score. And, you know, there's a lot of people in medicine now who are drawing the parallels between your psychological and emotional state of being and physical illnesses. A spiritual practitioner will take it one step further as well and go to the spiritual level. And that pretty much almost always means talking to the soul And the soul may have experiences from other lifetimes, for example, that have created some level of karma, which is being given an opportunity to be worked out in this lifetime. Maybe that karma resulted in a negative belief about oneself, which created emotions, which now create physical outcomes in the body. So spiritual practitioners, will look at all of those levels as interrelated. And is it healing? Well, it's not guaranteed healing, but for a lot of people, it is healing. And that's why huge amounts of money have been spent by people out of pocket, because the health insurance doesn't cover these types of things. People are spending that money because they're getting results.
I love that explanation. It couldn't be more womanship, and the belief in terms of, we are, and our healing is mind, body, and spirit. They're all interconnected, and so often we divide them. And worries cause stress, stress causes disease. So any way that we can find of alleviating that on, a physical, an emotional, and a spiritual level, I believe that we need the knowledge about to explore, which is one of the reasons I wanted you on today, so that people would understand more about what you do and how you can potentially help them. So we've got 5 minutes left. Any other questions that are in people's minds?
Not so much a question, but I just wanted to share that I'm just fascinated with what you're doing, Genevieve, because you did my first reading for me last week. And just my whole mindset has just shifted in this last week. Like you say, it was almost like a deep counseling session as well. And it's just really helped me with this mind shift that I really needed. And I feel so much closer to my father, really energetically.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Kim.
I'm just really amazed by it, because I was so nervous about it, because I'd never done anything like this. And it was just really, just really profound. It's just very, so thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
I feel like I'm just scratching the surface still of this whole world as well. Probably, right? From just that one session.
Yeah. I mean, I'm all about, sorry, Nicolette, I'm all about teaching people to do it themselves, because I fundamentally believe these gifts are human gifts. These are not gifts for special people. These are gifts that everybody actually has. And we're now in a time where let's say the dark forces that wanted to keep it all a secret and wrap it all up are diminishing in their power. So it's now the time for us to reclaim these abilities for ourselves. So I'm really about helping individuals do that. And on that subject, I want to let everyone know I'm doing a channeling workshop. It's on the Womanship platform, and it's a 90-minute online workshop, which is all about assisting you to be able to make these connections for yourself, to activate your psychic awareness, just to strengthen that muscle, practice that muscle in a supportive group setting where I give you a lot of coaching, and we would do an exercise together that uses just a pen and paper. And I really hope everyone gets something out of it, and maybe I'll make it a regular thing. That would be really great. So I have that coming up on the 25th of June at 7 p.m. That's a Wednesday. And there's another Wednesday on the 23rd of July at 7 p.m. But if anybody would like this type of teaching support, you are really welcome to contact me, and we can set something up privately, or we can do it on another day that suits more people. But I really am all about teaching people to do this themselves.
I absolutely love that generosity of coming from it, saying that it's something that we all have, and that you're actually helping us all connect. And I know in the Deep for Death session that we did, for example, we used that so beautifully to help us use our own intuition to connect with people we may have lost, and showing us how to do that. So Thank you so much for this conversation. You're also hosting some short meditations with our sort of midday meditations or 20-minute meditation sessions. So please check it out. It's just been a pleasure chatting with you. I've got so many more questions, so we may well have to do this again.
Let's do it again. Thank you so much, Nicolette. I really appreciate it.